Hurricane Irma strengthens, hits Cuba on its way to Florida. Hurricane Irma hit northern Cuba during its long, destructive march toward Florida, where it's expected to hammer the state with whistling winds, heavy rain and surging seas. Florida authorities went door-to-door warning residents of the massive hurricane, sending crowds jamming highways as they fled north. The powerful Category 5 storm had maximum sustained winds of 160 miles per hour when it made landfall on Cuba's Camaguey archipelago, the National Hurricane Center said late Friday. It edged closer to South Florida after killing 24 people in the Caribbean this week, and strengthened to a Category 5 storm in Cuba. Hours earlier Friday, it was a Category 4. Irma is expected to be near the Florida Keys and South Florida by early Sunday, and many residents there have moved inland. About 5.6 million people in the state have been ordered to evacuate, Governor Rick Scott said. Forecasters and Florida officials sent dire warnings imploring residents on the path of the storm to evacuate and escape Irma's wrath. If you have been ordered to evacuate, leave now. Not tonight, not in an hour, now, Scott said Friday night. Staying in homes could subject residents to storm surges high as 12 feet, the governor added. Here are the latest developments. Irma's center was about 85 miles east of Camaguey, Cuba, on Saturday morning. It appears Miami will avoid a direct hit but will still get pounded by strong winds, storm surge and heavy rains. Irma's center will move near the north coast of Cuba on Saturday, near the Florida Keys on Sunday morning, and near the southwest coast of Florida on Sunday afternoon, the National Weather Service said. Before Irma hit Cuba, it had slammed the Turks and Caicos, and southeastern Bahamas. In the Caribbean, hard hit Barbuda and St. Martin Islands wearily prepared for Hurricane Jose, which could hit there over the weekend. The Red Cross said as many as 26 million people could be exposed to destructive winds and torrential rain just in the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Cuba. It said 1.2 million people have been battered by the storm. At its peak, a then Category 5 Irma sustained maximum wind speeds of at least 185 miles per hour for longer, 37 hours, than any storm on record. Of the 24 deaths blamed on Irma, 9 were in unspecified French territories, 1 on Barbuda, 1 at the British Overseas Territory of Anguilla, 2 in Dutch-administered St. Martin, 4 in the British Virgin Islands, 4 on the U.S. Virgin Islands, and 3 in Puerto Rico. Hurricane warnings are in effect for parts of central Cuba, and the southeastern, central and northwestern Bahamas. Hurricane warnings also are in effect from Sebastian Inlet on the east coast, southward around the Florida Peninsula to Ana Maria Island on the Panhandle. The warning includes the Keys, Lake Okeechobee, and Florida Bay. Tracking Hurricane Irma's path. Irma could overwhelm parts of the Bahamas, a nation of about 390,000, with storm surges of up to 20 feet, well above the island's elevation, CNN meteorologist Chad Myers said. Irma brought heavy rain and powerful winds to the low-lying Turks and Caicos Islands. The capital island of Grand Turk suffered quite a bit of damage, including to part of a hospital's roof, Governor John Freeman told CNN. Nervous Florida waits. U.S. and European forecast models predicted the eye could strike the Florida Keys and then the Everglades, west of Miami, on Saturday night into Sunday morning. It's not a question of whether Florida is going to be impacted, it's a question of how bad Florida is going to be impacted, Federal Emergency Management Agency Administrator Brock Long said. Ahead of the game, Florida seniors, nursing homes prep for Hurricane Irma. Though the core has the most power, Irma is huge. Its winds of at least tropical storm force cover 70,000 square miles, larger than the area of Florida, 65,000 square miles. Florida is not the only state preparing for possible impact. FEMA said Alabama and North Carolina should watch the storm. South Carolina Gov. Henry McMaster issued a mandatory evacuation for Saturday for some barrier islands while Georgia Gov. Nathan Deal expanded the state of emergency to include a total of 94 counties. After Irma, Hurricane Jose looms. The Caribbean islands pummeled by Irma are assessing the damage. Shredded buildings, battered cars and streets submerged in water are a common sight. Barbuda, one of 2 major islands in the nation of Antigua and Barbuda, is barely habitable, with about 95% of its buildings damaged, Prime Minister Gaston Brown said. Brown estimated the damage will cost $100 million to fix on the island of 1,800 residents. Anguilla, Barbuda, St. Martin and St. Barts are under a hurricane warning for Hurricane Jose, which could pass close to those islands Saturday. The government called for voluntary evacuations from Barbuda, Brown said. Hurricane season hasn't peaked yet. Here's what to expect. Camaguey, Haiti. Hurricane Jose, a powerhouse tropical cyclone barreling northwest toward the Caribbean islands hammered by Hurricane Irma earlier this week, is now almost a Category 5 storm, officials said late Friday. The National Hurricane Center at 11 a.m. Friday said that Jose had reached maximum sustained wind speeds of 155 miles per hour, which would be just shy of a Category 5 storm. A bulletin from the center at 2 a.m. Eastern Time Saturday indicated Jose's maximum wind speed decreased slightly to 150 miles per hour, with some gusts blowing even higher. Though still a Category 4 system, some fluctuation in intensity, up or down, could occur during the next 24 hours, forecasters said. A hurricane warning is in effect for Barbuda, Anguilla, St. Martin and St. Barthélemy, also known as St. Barts. The island of Antigua is under a hurricane watch. Once it passes the northern Leeward Islands, Jose is projected to hook north and steadily lose muscle. It will, however, likely throw off tropical storm-strength weather felt Saturday night in the British and U.S. Virgin Islands, which also sustained heavy damage during Irma. The alarming announcement comes as military personnel and emergency responders from the United States and Europe rushed to aid those still reeling from Irma, which roared across the same region as a Category 5 storm Wednesday. On the devastated island of Barbuda, authorities and private tour operators scrambled to evacuate the remainder of its 1,600 residents, taking them to emergency shelters on nearby Antigua. Michael Joseph, president of the Red Cross in Antigua and Barbuda, described Barbuda as though it were a tropical ghost town of broken buildings and fallen trees. It's uninhabitable. I would literally say that 100% of the infrastructure is gone. Light, water, communication, it's a total blackout, Joseph said. There was only one fatality on the island, a 2-year-old boy identified Friday as Carl Jr. Francis. He was found by neighbors the day prior, having been swept away by storm surge as Irma pounded the island and ripped off the roof of his family's home, the Associated Press reported. It was a miracle that there was only one death, Joseph said. Hurricane Irma will batter Florida and devastate the United States, officials warn. On Antigua, evacuees were hunkered down and preparing for Jose's possible hit. People are worried, when they see images of Barbuda, that it could be Antigua next, Joseph said. In Anguilla, part of the British West Indies, Irma's fury left homes and businesses shattered across the 16-mile island. Local officials pleaded with residents Friday to take all precautions ahead of Jose to ensure their survival, and they encouraged people to quickly clear existing debris so it could be removed and battened down, as not to pose a threat during the next wave of dangerous weather. With telecommunication services severed, police traveled the island's neighborhoods Friday to relay what information they had about Jose's path, said Patrick Lynch, who operates Roy's Bayside Grill. Reached Friday afternoon via Facebook, he seemed unaware the storm had reached such ferocious strength. Though badly damaged, the restaurant was planning to open Friday and serve limited lunch and dinner items. People need a place to go, connect, talk about what has happened and feel normal for an hour or two, Lynch said. So we're going to try and provide that. In closing, he wrote, please keep Anguilla in the news. The destruction is island-wide. The people here are good and friendly. It is a jewel in the Caribbean, and it needs help. The U.S. military has dispatched 5 warships, as well as helicopters, cargo planes, National Guard troops and thousands of pounds of supplies to help hurricane victims. The military will provide generators, fuel and gas, water purification systems and tools to clear roads choked with storm debris, according to the U.S. Northern Command. The Army Corps of Engineers sent teams to U.S. territories to help restore electricity, and National Guard personnel were activated to help with evacuations and search and rescue efforts. The Federal Emergency Management Agency spoke of a complete power communications collapse in the U.S. Virgin Islands, but people trapped there have become frustrated and despondent. Amy Larson, who runs a charter boat business in the U.S. Virgin Islands, said she has been in Florida as her husband weathered Irma's wrath on Street John. In tears, she said, "People are very concerned. They want to get off the island. They need supplies. They don't feel like anybody is giving them any sort of attention." Isolated by Irma, British Virgin Islands don't know what will come first, help or Hurricane Jose. France and the Netherlands also moved to respond to some of Irma's worst destruction on Street Martin, an island they share, and Street Barts, a French overseas territory. The French government deployed 455 police, military and other personnel on Friday, with double that number expected by Saturday. The presence was partly to restore public order and combat a wave of looting. Using Guadeloupe as a base, French officials were dispatching military helicopters and civilian aircraft with food, water and medical supplies. Yet Jose could quickly jeopardize those relief efforts, authorities warned. "My concern today is that because of Hurricane Jose, we are going to have another period in which transport won't be operating," the French health minister, Agnès Buzyn, told French TV. Kenneth E. Mapp, the governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands, said that Jose's rain and winds could linger through Sunday or Monday. At the White House on Friday, President Trump's Homeland Security advisor, Tom Bossert, indicated the U.S. had begun evacuating American citizens from the French and Dutch sides of Street Martin ahead of Jose. Gretchen and Peter Bogach have been hunkered down since Wednesday at Street Martin's Hotel Esplanade. With no power or running water, they were desperate for information about whether assistance was on the way. The couple had been heading back to Florida after celebrating their 20th wedding anniversary on the nearby island of Saba. Once Irma cleared Street Martin, they used their intermittent cell service to text relatives back in the United States for help in figuring out how to get home. But with the airport seriously damaged, there was no way out. "Now it seems we are trapped on this island," Gretchen Bogach wrote in a text message to the Post Friday afternoon. "Food is okay for now but will be getting low in a few days. Doesn't help to know another hurricane is heading this way." In the British Virgin Islands, residents said they lacked information on aid and relief efforts. Communications were mostly down and many roads were blocked with vehicles, telephone poles, metal roof material and other debris. Freeman Rogers, editor of the weekly BVI Beacon newspaper and a resident of Road Town, the territory's capital, said that people at shelters were running low on food and water, clean clothes and medical supplies. He described a sense of frustration about the response by the British government. Prime Minister Theresa May has said that British military personnel have been working round the clock to provide relief to the battered islands. Rogers said residents were most concerned about whether Hurricane Jose would cause further damage. "People don't have roofs," he said in a telephone interview. "It'd be really rough if we got hit with another big hurricane." What's in the path of Hurricane Irma? Irma, meanwhile, continued to push west, making landfall in Cuba around 11 p.m. Eastern Friday and gaining strength on its march toward the Bahamas and, eventually, Florida. The Cuban government moved hundreds of thousands of people away from cities and towns along the coast in preparation for Irma, including some 36,000 tourists from hotels and beach resorts that are likely to be pounded. While Havana is expected to be spared the worst of Irma's wrath, cities such as Quito de Avila and Santa Clara in the island's central provinces appear at risk of significant damage. State media showed images Friday of soldiers and Cuban civil defense brigades moving residents into shelters. The government said it had prepared at least 39 caves for use as emergency shelters. Children and elderly residents could be seen in them, eating sandwiches and snacks in the near darkness. "People are being quite orderly in terms of leaving their homes and going to safer shelters," said Richard Patterson, the Cuba representative for Care International in Havana. And as the rains diminished over vulnerable Haiti, residents and aid organizations began to assess the damage. In the city of Camaguey, 16 miles northwest of Port-au-Prince, Miracle LaFontaine, 82, wearily exited her inundated home midday Friday in a ripped and muddied white nightgown. A devout Christian, She's a rice farmer who has taken in 3 orphans, including a teenage girl who lost her mother last year in Hurricane Matthew. I was in bed, and I heard, "Mommy, wake up, the water is coming in," LaFontaine said. I got out of bed, but before I could get out the door, it was already up to here, she said, indicating her upper abdomen. Behind her home, fields of banana trees and sugar cane obscured rows of flooded houses. The storm, "She took all my church clothes, ruined," LaFontaine said. "What am I going to wear to church now?" "But I'm not scared." "I am never scared," she said. "The Lord Jesus Christ was there with me last night." Bever and a Grand Prix reported from Washington. Nick Naroff, Thomas Gibbons Neff and Matea Gold in Washington, Rochelle Krieger in Caracas, Venezuela, and Annabelle van den Bergen in Brussels contributed to this report.